All right, let's get right into it. We're talking about a moment when the world was, well, literally on the brink of war. A U.S. attack on Iran looked like a done deal. And then, poof, in just 48 hours, it was off. So today, we're going to unravel exactly why this almost war just vanished.
Okay, so this is the core of the mystery, right? January 15th, 2026. A U.S. attack on Iran feels imminent. Everyone is holding their breath. And then, suddenly, it's called off. How does that even happen? Why was it stopped?
I mean, just look at this timeline. It's wild. On January 13th, you have President Trump telling the people of Iran, help is on the way. That's about as clear a signal as you can get. War seems inevitable. Then, bam, by the 15th, it's off. A total 180 in just 48 hours. You gotta ask, what on earth happened behind the scenes?
So where do we even start to look for answers? Well, you might think it's in some classified document or a secret cable, but no. The first clue is actually a whole lot greasier. We're talking about pizza.
Yep, you heard that right. Pizza. The night this attack was supposed to go down, pizza deliveries to the Pentagon and the White House absolutely surged. Now, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but this isn't just a random fact. It's actually a pretty famous, if unofficial, signal that something major is about to happen.
It's so well known, in fact, that it has a name, the Pentagon Pizza Index. It's this informal indicator that tells you a crisis is brewing. See, when officials are stuck late in war rooms planning military action, they don't exactly pop out for a fancy dinner. They order in, and that usually means pizza. On January 15th, the index wasn't just whispering. It was screaming that a major move was just hours away.
So, the pizzas are being delivered, the war rooms are buzzing, everything points to go. But then, the phone rings, and this one call throws a massive wrench into the entire plan.
And you won't believe who was on the other end. Israel. You'd expect them to be giving the U.S. a big green light, right? I mean, they've been one of Iran's staunchest opponents for years. But instead, Prime Minister Netanyahu calls President Trump and says, wait, it was a total shock. Why the sudden hesitation?
Well, it turns out this wasn't some sudden change of heart about Iran. It was a cold, hard, tactical calculation. See, Israel's famous Iron Dome missile defense system, well, it was running low on ammo after a recent conflict. Netanyahu knew that if the U.S. struck Iran, the retaliation wouldn't hit Washington, D.C., it would hit Tel Aviv. And at that exact moment, their defenses weren't ready. The risk to Israeli civilians was just too high. They needed to stall. Okay, so as the White House is trying to wrap its head around Israel's call, another huge problem drops right in their lap. This time, it's from key Arab allies, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And their message was blunt. You can't use our airspace. For the U.S. military planners, this was a logistical nightmare.
And here's why that was such a big deal. The largest U.S. airbase in the entire Middle East is in Qatar. Saudi Arabia is another key staging ground. Without access to that airspace, the flight paths for U.S. jets become way longer and a lot more dangerous. These allies basically slammed the door shut, terrified that they would be the ones to face Iran's retaliation.
So you've got allies getting cold feet, and then there was a hardware problem. A really, really big piece of hardware was just not where it needed to be. I'm talking about the USS Abraham Lincoln. This thing is one of America's most advanced nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. It's not just a ship, it's a floating fortress. It carries dozens of fighter jets and is basically a mobile airport, absolutely crucial for air support in an operation like this. And here was the problem. On January 15th, the USS Abraham Lincoln was simply too far away from the action. Attacking a massive country like Iran without that carrier's air support, that would leave U.S. troops incredibly vulnerable to a counterattack. The Pentagon looked at the map and decided, nope, the risk is way too high, we need to wait.
And if you think that's all, you'd be wrong. Because on top of all these logistical and diplomatic headaches, you had two other global giants playing chess in the background.
Let's talk about China and Russia. Neither of them wanted to see a pro-U.S. government in Iran. So what were they doing? Well, there were reports that China was sending cyber experts to help Iran build a kind of internet wall to block services like Starlink. Meanwhile, Russia's President Putin was diplomatically condemning the whole thing as a foreign conspiracy. For both of them, seeing America get stuck in another Middle Eastern conflict was a win.
So, let's recap. You've got nervous allies, a massive logistical mess, a missing aircraft carrier, and two global rivals stirring the pot. It's no wonder they hit the pause button. But that brings us to the big question, is the storm over,
Or is this just the calm before it hits?
Well, for now at least, the strategy has done a complete 180. The original plan, direct military strikes on 52 targets in Iran, that's been scrapped. The new strategy? It's all about economic warfare. Instead of missiles, the US is proposing a huge 25% tax on Iran and anyone who trades with them. They're trying to squeeze them financially.
But a lot of military analysts are looking at this and saying, hold on a second. They don't see this as a move toward peace. They see it as a strategic pause. There's an old saying they're pointing to. When a lion stops before a hunt, it isn't scared, it's getting a better position. And that's the fear here, that this is just a delay to line up all the pieces for a much more effective attack later on.
And that's really where this leaves us. Is this just a temporary pause to regroup for a better planned attack, or has the moment for war truly passed? It's the critical question, because let's be real, the Iron Dome will get resupplied. That floating fortress, the USS Abraham Lincoln, will get into position. The pizza will get cold. So the question isn't if the US can get ready for another round, but what happens when it is.